Hi, I'm Josh Fishman. I'm the technology editor at the Chronicle of Higher Education, and welcome to the most important session at the conference today, getting to graduation. Actually, I think this is a very important session. Look at what's going on around us. We have a president who has set a goal of producing millions more college graduates in the next decade than this country's ever produced before. We have, and has done that because of global competitiveness reasons, because of economic reasons, and because of a belief in the value of education. On the other hand, we have an economy that's in the doldrums. We have institutions of learning, particularly public institutions, that are slashing programs right and left. And these two trends are really in opposition to each other. And there are a lot of people that are saying, well, technology is the solution. This is how we're going to bridge the gap between the resources that we don't have and the goals that we want to get to, getting to graduation. And so what I want to do here today is have a very vibrant back and forth conversation between the policymakers and practitioners in higher ed and foundations up here at the dais, and you, both the policymakers and the practitioners, who have to deal with this on a day-to-day basis and to put this into action in the audience. So the way this is going to work is I'm going to give the brief spiel that I just gave, and then I'm going to introduce these folks one by one. They're going to talk for a couple of minutes about their particular take on this issue, and then we're going to start with questions from the audience and from me, and questions between all of them. There is a microphone. Bobby, if you could just hold that up. And so when you have questions, line up right behind Bobby, be very vigorous, jump up, and you've got probably a lot of good things to say. Your viewpoints are as valid as anybody up here, and we really, really want to hear from you, and we really want to have a good back and forth. And there's no better person that I think to start us off back and forth as Mark David Millerin, right over here. And Mark is the Deputy Director of Higher Education at the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And he founded and served as CEO for the private consulting group Catalyze Learning International. He is also a member of the Board of Trustees for Western Governors University and has a resume that would be way, way too long for me to give it incomplete. So let me just turn it over to Mark for his initial statement.
Thanks, Josh. The best part of our conversation and setting up for this is we've made a decision that we really wanted to make this a dialogue, and so we have made a commitment to use no PowerPoint whatsoever. Reminded me of a student focus group where a student pointed out to me that many teachers who use PowerPoint have no power nor a point. So we're right with it. What I just want to do is quickly frame, I think, a national conversation about college completion that's going on right now, and talk about a little bit about why the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation in particular is so keenly focused on this issue. And I'll just use, given that we're in the land of CES, I'll use an IPO frame. I want to talk about imperatives, problems, and opportunities. And first is this whole cavalcade of educational imperatives that you're getting. You'll get educational imperatives coming, what I would call the patriotic imperative. You hear President Obama saying, countries that outteach us today will outcompete us tomorrow, and basically saying that if we don't raise our education levels, our country is going to be in decline in big ways. Lots of data around OECD and others to talk about that. There's a business and industry imperative that says if we don't get more people trained, especially in STEM disciplines, we're going to fall behind, and our business and economic interests are going to fall behind. And so people are really pushing education for those areas. And then I would argue there's a growing and loud social justice or personal imperative, I would rather phrase it. And that personal imperative is really about giving students the ability to live a life where they can earn well and live well. In some ways, I always say to live well and free. And the idea is that having them using education today really in many ways is the pathway to possibilities. Most of the new jobs are requiring higher levels of education. Those educational credentials in particular give them the pathway to those degrees and to those job opportunities and the chance to actually live a better life and have more economic viability. But there's also in some ways a freedom imperative, which is the ability for a student to have self-efficacy, meaning the ability to understand what's happening to them in this fast-paced world. People know more about us than ever before. A friend of mine went to Israel recently on a big trip. Wife was really upset about him going, and while he was there, he decided to try to make her happy, and so he actually went and bought her a diamond bracelet he was going to bring back and thought for sure she was going to be thrilled. When he came back, he gave her the bracelet, and she wasn't excited at all. He was confused by this, and then she pointed out to him that the bank had called her while he was making the transaction and asked her if it was okay that he buy the bracelet. And she said, okay. She said, only one thing would have gotten you in trouble, and that's if you didn't give it to me. But we're more and more used to a world driven by analytics and data where people use information about us constantly, and we're used to having that information go up. But that information is also used for things like manipulating voting, marketing behavior, and a host of other things. So the imperative for critical thinking, problem solving, decision making, and understanding how to live in what I would call a digital democracy more important than ever before. I always go back to Jefferson's quote, "The nation expects to live ignorant and free at once what never was and what never will be." So I think that personal imperative is there in a big way, which in many ways the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation is all about that, because our mission is to help people have the chance to live healthy and productive lives. We do big work in global health, global development, but in the US, what we really lean into is education, because our research shows that post-secondary education, getting students to and through post-secondary education is in many ways the pathway to possibility. It gives them the chance to live healthy and productive lives in the United States. So that's the imperative. The problem is we're not doing that good of a job in getting people to and through post-secondary education. Right now, our national completion rate for people attending higher education is around 50%. That number goes down to about 25% when you start looking at low-income students. And it goes down into the teens when you look at low-income first-generation students. Guess what is the fastest growing population of students in higher education? Low-income first-generation students. So we've got a real challenge. And the global education completion data shows us that it's not necessarily that we're falling behind as much as it is other countries are surpassing us or getting to us and surpassing us because of their efforts. We've gone from first in educational attainment to about 9th or 12th, depending on how you read OECD data. So if we want to have the opportunities that we've been a part of for the last 2 or 3 decades and beyond, we're going to have to really lean into this educational imperative and take on this challenge, this problem. And again, when I looked at the student panel earlier, I'm not too worried about the students that were up here. I think the students that were up here are going to succeed. What I'm really worried about are the 6 million students in community colleges, the 2 to 3, 4 million students that are in public access universities that come from low-income, first-generation backgrounds that are having a much more difficult time. So our challenge is, and this is where it comes to the opportunity, how do we leverage technology to really make a dent in this problem? And we feel pretty strongly that technology can be a big driver and supporter of our efforts. In particular, and I'm just going to lay out 2 of them, and I'm going to turn it over to the people who are doing this hard work to talk about how they're taking this on. I think one is pointing our analytics engines towards this problem and really making sure that we're collecting data about how well our students are doing. A lot of our technology work has been about increasing access, about bells and whistles, about people being pretty excited, but what we really need to do is get the data in front of us that tells us whether or not students are succeeding and being able to adjust as we go along. The challenge is right now, a good friend of mine has a line where he says, leading in education without data is like bowling in the dark. Yeah. Might be fun, but someone gets hurt. Okay. The challenge for us right now is to turn on the lights and figure out how we can use that data to do the second part of it, which is to really begin to lean into innovations around redesigning our existing models using all different types of technologies to transform student services, instructional strategies to help more students from diverse backgrounds be successful, to really get smart about the diverse array of students that are coming to us.